Real harm, ongoing and imminent, while SCOTUS waits, and only it knows for what. Welcome to Law and Society. I want to give you a quick update of what is happening with the cases before the Supreme Court. Remember, the Supreme Court is now sitting on cases that is about tariffs, that is about the National Guard, that is about birthright citizenship, that is about independent agencies, that is about voting, that's about transgender athletes. And these topics, each of them, have far-flung impacts on the community. So in the tariffs case, the Learning Resources case, Learning Resources is a small toy-making company, and they sued to have IEEPA and this tariff policy rescinded because it is hurting their small business because they get their parts from China. And if you read their brief, and I read their brief, you get to see how they explain that the cost of them bringing these toys and their products to the market has gone up exponentially because of the tariffs. And every single day that the Supreme Court waits, every single day that the Supreme Court does not, publish a ruling, issue a ruling about this case, it is hurting the American economy. It is hurting small businesses. It is hurting farmers. It is hurting even the big companies that are trying to bring in manufacturing or trying to do business in the United States. And the Supreme Court heard the oral arguments last month, 5th of November, and they still have not ruled on it. Yesterday, not yesterday, but I'm talking about today's Tuesday, but on Monday, they could have released the order, but they didn't. So now we have to wait until next month to see if they're going to issue an order ruling in the tariffs case. Remember, months and months and months have gone by, and God only knows if these businesses are even going to remain open because of what is happening and the delay. The delay has an impact. And somewhere the Supreme Court has lost the reality check that they need, because in these cases, small businesses are being harmed. They are incurring real harm every single day that the Supreme Court does not issue its ruling. Why or how the Supreme Court doesn't see that, I don't know. In the National Guard case, if the Supreme Court were to rule on the National Guard case, then the government would know the decision and thereby go by that decision instead of wasting National Guard taxpayer money by taking National Guard out of their communities and putting them on duty on city streets away from their homes and sometimes their states. The birthright citizenship case, it's important and causing harm because it is impinging on a constitutional right of birthright citizenship. Mind you, in this case, the court did not stay the lower court's order. The court has accepted the certiorari and will hear the case, but they did not stay the lower court's order that stopped Donald Trump's executive order. And that's kind of an indication about where the court may go with this case. But then there's the independent agencies. The cases with the National Labor Relations Board, whether it be the FCC, the Federal Trade Commission, all of these firings that Donald Trump's regime fired in the first 10, 11 months, they are all under review in a sense in a case Trump v. Slaughter. Because it is about regulatory agencies. And when they rule on that, they will rule either narrowly on just this case, or their ruling will have a much broader impact. And in instances, I think with the tariffing and with the independent agencies, those cases will have a far-flung impact because I don't think that the court is going to issue narrow ruling in either one of them, because one of them, the tariffs one, is about the validity of IEEPA as a tariffing law when Congress wrote it as a regulatory law. So Donald is overreaching and taking away Congress's tariffing power without Congress having delegated it. And then the independent agencies case, which is about the executive's power to be able to fire or hire anybody in these independent agencies, notwithstanding congressional legislation. So Donald Trump is going against Congress's legislation and firing these people without following the process that Congress has legislated and a previous president signed into law, which is that they have to provide, that the president, the executive, has to provide cause and also provide notice to Congress for of 30 days before they plan on firing that independent agency head that was nominated and then approved by the Senate. And they also need and Donald Trump also needs to show cause of why he was firing them, and he has done none of that. The voting rights case, of course, it impacts the right to vote, so it's something that it's not incurring harm every single day, but it has an impact on how people perceive our right to vote, that it's hanging in the balance in the Supreme Court. And the transgender cases, they're equal protection cases. And in the Trump v. Orr case, it's about transgender people having their own gender that they identify with on their passports, as opposed to having their gender that was assigned at birth to them on their passport. It is, I think it is kind of degrading for the trans community for the court to say that you don't have this right to call yourself what you believe you are. Can the state tell you what your gender is if the medical community signs off on your gender after completing whatever procedures, physical, psychological, and there's a documentation of your identity? Does the judiciary, does our legal system have the power to rescind those medical findings? That is an important question to ask. That is an important liberty interest that somebody takes away from somebody if you say that, no, we don't acknowledge the gender that you identify with. We'll just call you something. We will misname you. We will call you by your dead name. And we are going to degrade you. And we are going to deprive you of equal protection under the law. So it is a matter of constitutional concern that the Supreme Court is sitting on. So it is Donald Trump is flooding the courts with cases that the Supreme Court is sitting on, and it is having a harmful impact on our businesses, on the taxpayer coffers, on our constitutional rights, on the status of independent agencies and their leadership, about our own identities. And these are all cases hanging in the balance in the Supreme Court, and they're taking their sweet time. And as I say, only they know for what they are waiting. With that said, keep an eye out on these rulings, or whenever they decide to come out. Keep an eye out for the tariffs, the National Guard cases, the birthright citizenship cases, the independent agencies, the voting rights cases, transgender cases, and there are other cases as well. I'm picking the ones that are on the docket that are big cases, but there are other cases that need to be ruled on as well. But these cases are pivotal, and they impact the American people in broad swaths. And the court should be more responsible when it takes up these cases and should rule in a timely manner. And this tariffs thing, it's gone more than 40 days. That's not a timely manner. That's taking your sweet time and letting businesses suffer in the meantime. With that said, thank you for listening. Keep an eye out. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.